So, we have moved on to literary fiction for this week, and actually, that wasn't the plan. My plan was to go with something light-hearted and maybe some romance just to balance things up for me a bit from the week before. And unfortunately, although I started reading some books, I just didn't get fully engaged with them, and I didn't think that you would be interested in hearing about books that I wasn't engaged with, and I ended up DNFing. If I'm wrong about that and you're interested to know what books I read, what I thought of them, and why I put them down, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I'd more than happy share that information with you. But I didn't. I changed my mind and I went to literary fiction just because several people on BookTube had mentioned a few different books, and one of them happened to be in the reduced section at Waterson's when I was in, and I was like, right, let's go with that one then. We're in the reduced pile. That's always a way forward for me. So my first book is The Correspondent by Virginia Evans. I wasn't sure what to expect from this, but the format of it is just a lady in her 70s that corresponds with people through written word and by writing letters, and there is nothing else about the book other than the correspondence and the letters that she writes and she receives. I wasn't sure how that was going to go. And actually, for the first 30 pages or so, I would say it took me a wee bit to get into. And I think the reason for that is because you don't really know who she is and you don't know who she's writing to. So it's just names, and the conversations that are coming backwards and forwards don't really mean anything to you at that point. So it is a bit, I don't want to say bland, but it's difficult. It was difficult for me to engage with. But I'm glad I kept going, because after that 30-page type mark, I started to get a bit more engaged. More stuff comes in. You start getting used to certain names. You start piecing together who's who. And it didn't bother me in the slightest that some of this, as I say, all of this rather, is just letter correspondence. You would think that that would be difficult or annoying, possibly to follow, but it's not. I didn't find it annoying at all. You kind of get used to the flow and the rhythm of that. But generally speaking, it's about a lady in her 70s called Sybil, and it's the to and fro of conversation between her and her friends, her family members, her brother that lives abroad, and she writes to a whole host of different people just because that's who she is. She likes writing, she likes corresponding. So she doesn't put the brakes on that idea for anybody. So she will write to authors, for example, to let them know what she thought of their work, and film directors and various other things. And actually, I found it really interesting. But, oh my goodness, Sybil, my dear, you brought me to tears at the end of this book. My goodness me, dripping off my face, so they were. But that is a credit to Virginia. What an excellent piece of work she created here. I really enjoyed this. And like I say, I'm so glad that I pushed through from the beginning, because it was unexpected and really touched the heartstrings, made you think about the written word and how to speak to people. She can be quite blunt, but actually I found that quite interesting because her diction is amazing, and sometimes I quite liked the way that she was just straight to the point but did it in such a good way. You know, she's got such a good way with words. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I would recommend it if you're into literary fiction and want to try something a little bit different. I absolutely do recommend this. It is really good. So, that was my first book. And the second book that I chose, now I did have a wee list of ones that I took from a booktuber, I think it was, who had mentioned her favourite literary fiction books across the last year or something. Annoyingly, I literally couldn't get any of them at the library, and I'm trying to curb my spending for books because I can just go a bit haywire. So I'm trying really hard not to just purchase every single book that I want. So I wanted to make sure that the second book was a library book, and there was only 1 out of 8, I think, that I could actually get in the library. So that made my choice for me. So what I got was Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. Now, with this one, this is a story about a girl, a conservationist, that wants to reintroduce wolves to Scotland and help with the rewilding of Scotland and help to regrow our native forests and bring back the wildlife that we used to have in Scotland, which I think is a fabulous idea. And she wanted to do it by the introduction of wolves to balance out the ecosystem, bring back the predators, to cull the high numbers of deer that are causing problems. And that, it doesn't really tell you much more than that in the blurb, other than the fact that there was an event in the past that has caused her and her sister to hunker down and hide away a little bit. And it doesn't really give you much more than that. Let me tell you that this book is littered with triggers. If you would struggle with themes of abuse and violence and trauma, it might not be a good idea to go for this book. It was quite impactful. Now, I'm not taken away from Charlotte's writing, because strangely, if you know anything about me, you know that I can DNF halfway through a book because it just doesn't engage me. Now, although I found some of this difficult to read and I didn't enjoy those aspects of things as such, her writing is really good, really engaging, realistic. You do feel for the characters. I had a couple of issues with things going on, but regardless, I completed this book. So there must have been something good about Charlotte's writing. And beyond that, her research to make this as realistic as possible. You can tell that she really cares about the topic, but the level of abuse and trauma and how that impacts the human. Now that's the whole point in literary fiction. I get that it's not plot driven. So the wolf and rewilding thing felt very much like a background thing that was going on, but actually the main issues were with the characters, which is what makes it literary fiction. You follow Inti and her sister, and then you discover as time goes on exactly what happened throughout their lives and what caused them to be the way that they are, their interactions with the people when they come to Scotland. Yeah, it is very character driven. She does a good job of portraying the characters, but again, if you struggle with reading traumatic events, possibly give this one a miss. I don't like to use the word enjoy for a book that contains so much of that type of content, but it was well written. She did do a good job with it. I don't know if I'll be reading any more of that, and oh goodness, if I thought that I needed a pick-me-up last week. I most certainly need it this week because I finished this morning, and my goodness me, you know when you're about to head into a reading slump because of heaviness. That is I'm teetering on the edge, and I really don't want to. I am going to force myself to have a light-hearted read week. I don't know what that's going to contain, but it's going to have to be comedic or romance or some form of light-heartedness. I think my friend has actually suggested something for me, so I might look into that first. But yeah, just be careful, just be aware of what's involved. So that was my week, a bit more traumatizing than what I was expecting for this week, and I should have listened to myself and stayed with the chilled out themes to balance myself out, because I know I've not gone into certain other genres yet. I know I haven't tackled like horror, for example, and I plan to do that. And I know there's other genres as well. What is it called? It's like grim, dark fantasy and stuff like that, which I've dipped my toe into, but I don't know. So I want to try that as well, maybe. And I certainly don't want to go into that just now because of what I've just been through. But yeah, that's my reading for this week. If you guys have got any suggestions for me, feel free to drop me a comment. I would love to hear from you. I hope you've enjoyed the reviews today, for this week. And I will see you again soon. Okay, cheers.